Ah, welcome back, you beautiful anomaly. You were never meant to blend in. From the beginning, there was something in your frequency that refused to bow, not broken designed, not lost, calculating. While others rushed to be understood, you stood still in your own silence, and that silence carried weight. They felt it. They could not name it, but they felt it. The way you observed instead of reacted, the way you listened instead of explained. Your isolation was never exile. It was elevation. Your intensity was never instability. It was gravity. Rooms shifted when you entered, not because you were loud, but because you were unreadable. And what cannot be read cannot be controlled. They called it madness because they needed a word small enough to shrink you. They called it strange because they could not categorize you. But you were not chaotic. You were strategic. Every pause was deliberate. Every retreat was positioning. While they performed, you calculated. While they chased approval, you studied patterns. You saw through masks without tearing them off. You understood motives without announcing it, and that unsettled them. They sensed something off about you because you did not seek permission to exist. You were concealed power, sitting quietly at the edge of the room, gathering information, mapping weaknesses, measuring energy. You were never confused. You were waiting. What they dismissed as instability was foresight. What they mocked as distance was discipline. What they feared as darkness was depth. And now, slowly, they are beginning to realize the truth. Your madness was never a flaw. It was strategy all along. There was a season when misreading followed you like a shadow that would not detach. Glances lingered too long. Whispers folded into corners, doors closed with polite smiles. You felt the weight of dismissal in small gestures, in conversations that lowered their tone when you approached, in invitations that never arrived. They measured you incorrectly and felt safe doing it. They assumed limits where there were none. Subtle betrayals came wrapped in courtesy. Quiet rejection arrived, disguised as logic. You stood in the margins and watched it unfold. Every exclusion carved space around you. Every doubt placed upon you revealed how little they understood what stood before them. What they saw as absence was compression. What they treated as insignificance was stored force. You saw habits form, alliances shift, weaknesses surface. While they filled silence with noise, you gathered information. While they rushed to defend egos, you mapped patterns. Doubt became rehearsal. Pressure became conditioning. Trials hardened your interior without announcement. Discomfort refined perception. Setbacks trained stamina. You learned to hold expression steady while storms moved beneath the surface. Their ease dulled their senses. Your friction sharpened yours. They relied on assumption. You relied on awareness. Every test stretched capacity. Every slight strengthened restraint. You were not shrinking under scrutiny. You were consolidating. They mistook composure for fragility. They mistook patience for passivity. But tension was forging precision. Absence of applause built independence. Lack of recognition built resilience. You did not need their validation to measure growth. Each moment of being misjudged became evidence of concealed magnitude expanding beyond their sight. Tension grew beneath ordinary interactions. Eyes lingered with calculation rather than curiosity. Tones shifted, questions sharpened, compliments carried hidden edges. It was not volume or display, it was depth, a current beneath still water. They felt it and grew uneasy. Subtle envy disguised itself as advice. Restrained rivalry hid inside casual comparison. They began studying you the way one studies a threat that has not yet moved. Conversations became tests. Remarks were placed like traps, designed to pull emotion to the surface. They wanted reaction. They wanted proof that you were unstable, predictable, controllable. Each attempt to decode you revealed their anxiety. They sensed capacity in you long before you claimed it yourself. So they pushed, they nudged. They tried to provoke cracks in composure. Distractions were placed in your path. Narratives were shaped around you. Energy was directed at minimizing what they could not measure. Your restraint was labeled fragility. Your calm was interpreted as uncertainty. They assumed that lack of outward force meant lack of strength, but their efforts exposed more about them than about you. They reacted to a signal you had not yet broadcast fully. Instinct, told them you were not ordinary competition. Instinct warned them that your trajectory would not intersect with theirs for long. Instead of building themselves, they focused on shrinking your influence. They underestimated the discipline behind your stillness. They mistook quiet control for absence of clarity, and in doing so, they revealed their own imbalance. Every maneuver they made to unsettle you confirmed one truth. They recognized your potential even when you remained reserved. Then the pivot arrived without announcement. No explosion, no spectacle, just a quiet, internal decision. You stopped feeding impulses. You stopped answering every spark thrown in your direction. Something recalibrated within you. Instead of watching faces, you started tracking cycles. Instead of listening to words, you traced intentions. Behavior became data. Repetition became revelation. Your perception sharpened to a fine edge. Discernment cooled, precise and surgical. Responses slowed, deliberate and measured. You no longer rushed to defend, explain, or justify. You let statements hang in the air unanswered. You let tension breathe without interruption. Stillness transformed into leverage. What once drained you now informed you. You saw structures beneath interactions, motives beneath gestures, timing beneath movement. The shift was internal but undeniable. A narrowing of attention, a tightening of control. Less static, more direction. Lines were drawn without announcement. Access became selective. Proximity required qualification. Detachment was no longer avoidance, it was command. You chose where to invest attention. You chose what deserved reaction. Many did not. You recognized that not every presence earned entrance into your mental space. Not every voice deserved influence. Authority moved inward. Approval lost relevance. You did not need agreement to maintain certainty. Restraint evolved into strategy. Distance evolved into protection. Your energy became curated, guarded, intentional. The urge to prove dissolved. The need to be understood faded. Clarity replaced confusion. Composure replaced impulse. You understood that power is not loud, not frantic, not desperate. It is contained. It is directed. It is selective. And from that realization forward, you moved differently. Not colder, but cleaner. Not disconnected, but disciplined. The awakening was not dramatic. It was decisive. Something altered in your field, and it did not require announcement. Spaces recalibrated when you crossed the threshold. Dialogue adjusted its rhythm. Laughter softened. Tones straightened. There was a new density around you, a weight that did not demand attention yet commanded it. You no longer leaned forward seeking response. You leaned back and allowed others to reveal themselves. Pauses stretched longer in your company. Words were chosen with greater care. Glances checked for cues that never came. Your steadiness unsettled those who relied on speed and noise. You moved without hurry, and that absence of rush carried authority. You did not press for results. You did not chase alignment. You stood firm and let circumstances reorganize themselves around your stance. Momentum bent toward you without pursuit. Attraction replaced effort. Your signal became curated, deliberate, refined. Nothing leaked unintentionally. Nothing spilled without purpose. Intensity, once misunderstood, now revealed structure and calculation. What had been labeled instability emerged as foresight, measured and exact. You operated with timing instead of impulse, with positioning instead of pressure. Influence no longer required explanation, it radiated through restraint. Others sensed that access was limited, that engagement required awareness. They adjusted accordingly. You did not need to elevate your tone to establish command. Your composure set the standard. Your patience dictated pace. You allowed gravity to perform its function, drawing opportunities, exposing intentions, rearranging dynamics. There was no need to assert dominance. It was implied through consistency. The shift was subtle, yet undeniable. You were no longer reacting to environments. Environments responded to you. And in that reversal, control solidified without spectacle. Independence matured into chosen solitude. You withdrew from unnecessary exchanges without ceremony. No more clarifying motives. No more rewriting false stories crafted in your absence. You allowed opinions to exist untouched. You allowed speculation to circulate without interruption. There was strength in withholding correction. There was leverage in permitting misunderstanding. Facades around you began collapsing under their own inconsistency without your intervention. You did not confront, you recalibrated. Energy once spent on defense redirected inward. Attention narrowed to craft, structure, long-term positioning. You guarded your trajectory from external commentary. What you were building did not require witness. What you were shaping did not require applause. Separation became strategic rather than emotional. Discipline tightened its grip. Routines sharpened. Priorities clarified. You invested in yourself with relentless precision. Execution replaced discussion. Consistency replaced explanation. Projects advanced quietly, layer by layer, without broadcast. There were no declarations of intent, no dramatic exits, no warnings issued, only steady progress beneath the surface. Recognition lost its appeal. Agreement lost its necessity. You operated beyond the reach of casual opinion. Those who once speculated about your direction found no updates to analyze. Access diminished. Information narrowed. You chose privacy over performance. You chose substance over spectacle. Growth unfolded without spectacle, without noise, without permission. Your path no longer intersected with approval systems designed by others. You answered to a higher internal metric. And through that unwavering focus, advancement became inevitable. Detached from validation, immune to doubt, awareness matured into precision beyond ordinary perception. You evaluate variables before movement. You sense undercurrents before statements fully form. Atmospheres speak to you long before language attempts translation. Sequences reveal themselves early, long before repetition can occur. Decisions emerge from calculation rather than impulse. Timing aligns with intention rather than pressure. You no longer step blindly into scenarios. You map terrain internally before crossing it. Foresight functions like an internal compass, guiding placement and restraint with exact calibration. Your understanding compounds, feeding itself, refining itself, expanding without external validation. Progression no longer depends on reaction from outside forces. It sustains through disciplined alignment with your own evolving standard. Distance between you and others stretches wider with each advancement. Prediction becomes impossible. Your trajectory cannot be charted through previous behavior because you do not repeat unconsciously. Access to your internal process is sealed. Influence from surrounding forces weakens against your fortified direction. Attempts to anticipate your next move dissolve into confusion. Intensity around you deepens, not chaotic but concentrated, like a gathering storm that does not announce its arrival. What once unsettled observers now surpasses their capacity to comprehend. The magnitude of your refinement eclipses earlier impressions. You are no longer a puzzle to be solved. You are a force, operating on a frequency beyond their measurement. Evolution continues without ceiling, without pause, without dependency. And as that ascent accelerates, overwhelm replaces intimidation. They are left watching from a distance they cannot close. Nothing in your path was random. Every fracture carried instruction. Every stretch of emptiness concealed construction. Hardship refined capacity. Restraint forged discipline. Separation shielded focus. What appeared like disorder concealed architecture. What appeared like delay concealed alignment. There was design in the pressure. There was intention in the obscurity. You were not spiraling, you were structuring. You were not collapsing. You were consolidating. The confusion others projected onto you never belonged to you. It belonged to their limited perception. You moved ahead of their timing, ahead of their understanding, ahead of their comfort. They mistook advancement for instability. They mistook depth for danger. Yet everything followed an exact internal blueprint, unfolding without deviation. Now the recognition settles fully into place. There is no surprise in your ascent, no shock in your command. This was always encoded within you. Nothing was added. It was uncovered. Nothing was granted. It was reclaimed. The weight you carry is not borrowed authority but original design. You were never erratic. You were precise. Never lost. Never behind. Only early. Only prepared before others recognized the terrain. The title was always yours, even when unspoken. The throne was always positioned, even when unseen. Inevitability is not arrogance. It is awareness of structure completed. You are not stepping into strength. You are not acquiring dominance. You are remembering what you have always been. You were never ordinary.